Commander Elena Vasquez stared at the tactical display aboard the civilian transport vessel New Horizon, watching the last fragments of Earth disappear into the cosmic dust. 347 ships. That's all that remained of humanity's greatest civilization. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, research vessels, mining barges, even a few luxury yachts, anything that could carry people and supplies had been pressed into service for what the politicians called temporary relocation and what everyone else knew was permanent exile. The Gelinari had been methodical in their conquest. No negotiations, no ultimatums, just systematic orbital bombardment of every major population center until the remaining governments surrendered unconditionally. The alien empire had granted humanity exactly 72 hours to evacuate any civilians they could manage, then Earth would be marked as a quarantine world, forever sealed off from the rest of the galaxy. Elena had been a communications officer in the Earth Defense Fleet before the war ended in 6 days. Now she found herself de facto leader of the largest group of survivors, simply because she still wore a uniform and people needed someone to follow. The irony wasn't lost on her that the fleet, which had failed to protect their homeworld, was now responsible for shepherding refugees across hostile space. Commander Vasquez to the bridge, crackled through the ship's aging comm system. Elena took one last look at the tactical display. 347 green dots, crawling through space at sublight speeds, burning what little fuel they had to reach the first way station 17 light years from Earth. The bridge of the New Horizon buzzed with nervous energy. Captain Marcus Chen, the ship's original commander, looked haggard as he gestured toward the navigation console. "We've got a problem, Elena." The first way station just went dark. Elena felt her stomach drop. The way stations were neutral territory, ancient alien constructs that provided fuel, supplies, and safe harbor to any species with enough credits to pay. They had been humanity's lifeline for 3 centuries of interstellar expansion. "Define dark," Elena said, though she already suspected the answer. No response to hail. Long-range sensors showed the station intact, but no energy signatures. Either completely powered down or Chen's voice trailed off, or the Gelinari got there first. Elena finished. The alien empire had made it clear that humanity's exile came with conditions. No territorial claims, no military vessels, no establishing permanent settlements without express permission from local governing bodies. The message was clear. Humanity would exist at the sufferance of others. Dr. Sarah Hoffman approached from the science station, her white hair disheveled from days without proper rest. "Elena, I've been reviewing our supply manifest. With the way station unavailable, we have perhaps 3 weeks of food and water for the 38,000 people in this convoy. The fuel situation is even worse." Elena nodded grimly. She had known this moment would come, had dreaded it since they left Earth's orbit. Recommendations? The nearest inhabited system is Kepler 442. It's controlled by the Haxtanian Trade Consortium. They might be willing to negotiate. "For what?" asked Chen. "We have nothing to trade except the clothes on our backs." Sarah's expression hardened. "We have knowledge, human medical techniques, engineering expertise, cultural information, and we have." She hesitated. "Say it," Elena pressed. "We have 47,000 people. That's a significant workforce. If someone's willing to take us in." The unspoken word hung in the air. Slaves. Elena had read the reports about what happened to refugee populations in this part of the galaxy. The lucky ones ended up in indentured servitude that lasted generations. The unlucky ones simply disappeared. "There has to be another option," Elena said. But even as she spoke, she knew there wasn't. Humanity had burned its bridges when they lost the war. No allies remained, no treaties to invoke, no diplomatic immunity to claim. A calm signal interrupted her thoughts. "Commander, this is Lieutenant Daniels on the cargo hauler Ironwill. We're picking up distress signals from the outer edge of our formation." Elena's hands flew to the communications panel. "All ships, report status." The responses came in rapid succession. 3 vessels at the rear of the convoy were under attack by unknown raiders. The ships were small, fast, and had appeared without warning from behind a debris field the convoy had just passed. "All military personnel to your assigned vessels," Elena commanded, her training taking over. "Civilian ships maintain course and heading. Do not deviate from the convoy pattern." But even as she gave the orders, Elena knew they were meaningless. The 43 former military personnel scattered across the convoy had no weapons, no fighter craft, no means of defense beyond ramming speed. They could coordinate the civilian response, maybe organize damage control, but they couldn't fight. The attack lasted 18 minutes. When it was over, 2 ships were gone: the passenger liner Golden Dream with 1,200 souls aboard, and the mining vessel Prosperity carrying 800 refugees and most of their remaining industrial equipment. The third ship, the research vessel Discovery, had suffered catastrophic hull breaches but managed to stay with the convoy. Elena stared at the tactical display as the raiders' ships disappeared into hyperspace, their holds full of human slaves and salvage. 345 ships remained. In 18 minutes, they had lost nearly 2,000 people and equipment they couldn't replace. Commander. Jen's voice was barely above a whisper. The raiders transmitted something before they left. It's being distributed across all local frequencies. Elena closed her eyes, knowing what was coming. Let me hear it. The transmission was in heavily accented galactic standard, but the message was clear enough. Human convoy located in Sector 77 Alpha. Minimal defenses, rich pickings, transmitting coordinates. Within hours, the convoy was being shadowed by dozens of ships, pirates, slavers, and scavengers drawn by the promise of easy prey. They hung just beyond weapons range if the humans had possessed any weapons, like vultures circling a dying animal. Dr. Hoffman found Elena in the New Horizons' tiny observation deck 3 hours later. The crew of the Discovery has been transferred. 2 other ships, she reported. We had to abandon her. Total loss. Elena nodded without turning from the viewport. In the distance, she could see the lights of other ships in the convoy, each one carrying hundreds or thousands of refugees who trusted her to get them somewhere safe. Sarah, I need you to run some calculations. What kind of calculations? How many people could we save if we split the convoy? Send the fastest ships ahead while the slower ones provide distraction. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Elena, you're talking about abandoning half our people. I'm talking about saving the other half. Elena finally turned to face the older woman. Those raiders are going to keep picking us off one ship at a time until there's nothing left. At least this way, some of us might make it to no. The voice came from behind them. Elena turned to see Captain Chen approaching, his face set with determination. I've been listening to the comm chatter from across the convoy. People are scared, but they're not ready to give up, not yet. Marcus, we can't fight with cargo haulers and passenger liners. Maybe not, but we can sure as hell try. Chen activated a portable holographic display, showing schematics of various ship types in their convoy. I've been talking to some of the other captains. The mining vessels have heavy-duty industrial equipment, plasma cutters, magnetic field generators, even some demolition charges. The research ships have fabrication units, and the cargo haulers, he grinned. Well, they're built like flying fortresses. Thick hull plating, redundant life support, multiple engine systems. Elena stared at the display. You're talking about jury-rigging weapon systems. I'm talking about not going quietly into the night. Dr. Hoffman leaned over the hologram. The ethical implications alone. Sarah, Elena interrupted. What are the ethical implications of watching 20,000 children get sold into slavery? Because we were too civilized to fight back. The next 72 hours transformed the convoy in ways Elena had never imagined possible. Using shuttles and maintenance pods, technical crews moved between ships like antibodies in a bloodstream, carrying equipment, expertise, and desperate ingenuity. The mining vessel Titanium Express became the convoy's first weapons platform, when her crew successfully mounted plasma mining equipment as forward-firing cannons. The research vessel Quantum Pioneer used her fabrication units to create crude but effective armor plating for the more vulnerable passenger ships. Most impressively, the cargo hauler heavy lifter had been converted into a missile platform using industrial drones modified to carry demolition charges. Engineer Corporal Jake Morrison, who had been maintaining environmental systems on a luxury yacht before the evacuation, now found himself weapons coordinator for a fleet of improvised warships. It's not pretty, he admitted to Elena during one of their planning sessions, but it should pack enough punch to make those raiders think twice. Elena studied the tactical projections. They had managed to arm 37 ships with various improvised weapon systems. Another 50 ships had been up-armored using hull plating from damaged vessels and industrial materials. The remaining ships had been organized into protected groups within the convoy formation. Jake, give me an honest assessment. If those raiders come back in force, can we stop them? Morrison ran calculations on his tablet before answering. Depends on how many they bring and how well they coordinate. Our weapons are powerful, but short-ranged. If they're smart, they'll stand off and pick us apart with long-range fire. If they're greedy and want to board our ships intact, he shrugged. We might have a chance. The raiders returned for days later with 17 ships. Elena watched them approach on the tactical display, her heart pounding as she realized this was the moment that would determine humanity's fate, die fighting as free people, or live as slaves in alien chains. All ships, this is Commander Vasquez, battle stations. The phrase felt surreal coming from the bridge of a civilian transport, but across the convoy, 37 improvised warships powered up their weapons and began moving into defensive formations they had practiced during long hours of simulation. The raiders approached confidently, clearly expecting the same easy prey they had found before. Elena held her breath as the distance closed to weapons range. At 5,000 kilometers, the raider formations spread out to begin their boarding runs. At 3,000 kilometers, the Titanium Express opened fire. The plasma mining equipment had been designed to slice through asteroid rock and ice. Against the unshielded hull of a raider light cruiser, it performed exactly as intended. The enemy ship broke apart in a spectacular explosion that sent shockwaves through both fleets. The battle lasted 43 minutes. When it was over, 9 raider ships were destroyed and 5 more had fled into hyperspace. The convoy had lost 3 vessels and suffered damage to 14 others, but they had won. More importantly, they had sent a message. Within hours, long-range communications arrays across local space were buzzing with reports of the engagement. The human refugee convoy was no longer easy prey. They had teeth. Elena stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching damage control teams work to repair the holes torn in their hull by raider weapons fire. Captain Chen approached with the data pad showing casualty reports and damage assessments. Could have been worse, he said quietly. Elena nodded, but her mind was already moving to the next challenge. Word of their victory would spread, but so would word of their location and capabilities. They had perhaps days before someone decided to test them again. Marcus, I need to address the convoy. All ships, all personnel. 20 minutes later, Elena's voice carried across 37,000 human refugees scattered across 342 ships. People of Earth, I'm not going to lie to you. What we did today was just the beginning. We've proven we can fight, but that means every predator in this part of the galaxy now sees us as a threat instead of prey. She paused, choosing her words carefully. We have a choice to make. We can try to find some corner of space where we'll be left alone to scratch out a living as refugees, always looking over our shoulders, always dependent on others' mercy, or we can take control of our own destiny. Dr. Hoffman frowned from her position at the science station. Elena had discussed this moment with her senior staff, but she knew Sarah would object to what came next. The Hackstanian Trade Consortium controls 17 systems in the sector. They're the ones who refused us sanctuary when we first arrived. They're also the ones who've been selling navigation data to the raiders hunting us. Elena's voice hardened. I say we return the favor. The convoy voted. Not unanimously. There were heated arguments across the comm channels for hours. But when the final tally came in, 68% of the refugees supported Elena's proposal. They would not seek sanctuary in the Hackstanian systems. They would take them. The transformation of the convoy accelerated, using resources salvaged from the abandoned Discovery and captured from the raider ships. Human engineers began implementing designs that would have seemed impossible weeks earlier. The luxury yacht Star Dancer became a reconnaissance vessel, her high-end sensor arrays modified to track ship movements across multiple star systems. The cargo hauler Iron Mountain was converted into a mobile factory, her vast cargo bays filled with fabrication equipment, salvaged from across the convoy. Most ambitious of all was the project, centered around the massive or hauler Colossus at 3 kilometers long and designed to carry asteroid chunks between mining operations. She had more internal volume than the rest of the convoy combined. Under the direction of former Earth Defense Fleet Admiral Rebecca Foster, who had been traveling as a civilian passenger to avoid Gelinari attention, the Colossus began transformation into something unprecedented, a mobile space dock capable of building and maintaining an entire battle fleet. Elena, Admiral Foster said during one of their planning sessions, what we're doing here goes against every principle of interstellar law. The Galactic Council will brand us as pirates. Elena studied the tactical projections showing Hackstanian system defenses. Rebecca, the Galactic Council abandoned us when they allowed the Gelinari to drive us from our homeworld. We're past worrying about their opinions. And when word of this reaches Earth, when the Gelinari decide we've violated the terms of our exile. Elena was quiet for a moment. She had been trying not to think about the people they had left behind on Earth, the billions, who had chosen surrender over exile, who now lived under alien occupation. The Gelinari made it clear that Earth is a closed world. We're not going back. Our people there are on their own. The first target was the mining station at Kepler 440C, a massive automated facility that processed rare earth elements for the Hackstanian Trade Consortium. Intelligence gathered by the converted reconnaissance ships showed minimal defenses. just a handful of security drones and a single patrol vessel. Elena watched from the bridge of the New Horizon as 12 modified vessels approached the mining station. The Titanium Express and her sister's ship Iron Forge led the assault, their plasma mining equipment now refined into precision weapon systems. Behind them came the missile platforms, cargo haulers loaded with hundreds of guided projectiles built in the convoy's mobile factories. The station's automated defenses responded exactly as predicted, sending out a standard warning about an unauthorized approach to restricted space. When the human ships continued their approach, the security drones moved to intercept. The engagement lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, the mining station was under human control, its automated systems providing a steady stream of rare earth elements essential for advanced electronics and spacecraft components. More importantly, the convoy now had a permanent base of operations. Dr. Hoffman found Elena in the station's control center 6 hours after the capture. Around them, human technicians worked frantically to integrate the alien systems with their own equipment. Elena, we need to talk. They found privacy in one of the station's observation lounges, looking out at the convoy ships now anchored around their newly captured facility. In the distance, the Colossus had begun extending her construction arms, preparing to build the first purpose-designed warship in humanity's exile fleet. Sarah, I know what you're going to say. Do you? Because I'm not sure you understand what we've become. Dr. Hoffman activated a holographic display showing galactic news feeds. The Hackstanian Consortium has filed formal complaints with 3 different interstellar courts. They're calling us pirates, terrorists, a threat to galactic stability. Elena studied the news feeds. Reports of the human convoy's pirate activities were spreading across local space. Some species expressed outrage at the refugees' violation of interstellar law. Others seemed impressed by their audacity. A few appeared to be quietly calculating whether the humans might make useful allies or dangerous enemies. Sarah, look at this from their perspective. For 3 centuries, humanity was expanding through this part of the galaxy. We established colonies, trade relationships, defensive pacts. We were becoming a regional power. Elena paused. Then the Gelinari conquered us in 6 days. Every species that had been considering humanity as a potential threat suddenly saw us as weaklings, suitable only for exploitation. So your solution is to prove them wrong by becoming actual pirates. Elena turned to face the older woman. My solution is to ensure that humanity survives, not as refugees, not as slaves, but as a people capable of determining our own fate. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the convoy. Captain Chen's voice crackled through the station's comm system. Elena, you need to see this. Long-range sensors are picking up a massive fleet movement in the Hackstanian home system. Looks like they're mobilizing their entire defense force. Elena and Dr. Hoffman rushed back to the control center, where tactical displays show the approaching threat. 43 Hackstanian warships, led by 2 heavy cruisers, moving toward their position at maximum sublight speed. Time to intercept, Elena asked. 6 to 7 hours at current velocity, reported the sensor technician. Elena stared at the display. 43 dedicated military vessels against her improvised fleet of converted civilian ships. The math was not encouraging. Mum, came another voice from across the control center. We're receiving a transmission from the Hackstanian fleet. It's being broadcast on all frequencies. The alien commander who appeared on the main display was tall, crystalline, with the typical Hackstanian trait of light refracting through semi-transparent skin. When he spoke, his words were translated into crisp galactic standard. Human pirates, you have violated Hackstanian sovereign space and seized consortium property. You will return control of mining station Kepler for 4C immediately, and surrender your vessels for processing. Compliance will result in merciful relocation to suitable labor facilities. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your refugee convoy. The transmission ended, leaving the control center in stunned silence. Elena felt the weight of 37,000 lives pressing down on her shoulders. In 6 to 7 hours, humanity's exile fleet would face its greatest test. Win, and they would establish themselves as a force to be reckoned with in this part of the galaxy. Lose, and the dream of human independence would die among the asteroids of an alien mining system. Signal all ships, Elena commanded. Emergency conference. In 4 hours. All captains, all senior staff. We have a war to plan. The conference took place aboard the Colossus, in what had once been the ship's primary cargo bay, and was now a vast assembly hall, filled with the leadership of humanity's exile. Elena looked out at faces representing every surviving shipman. The convoy, former military officers, civilian captains, doctors, engineers, teachers, families. People who had never expected to find themselves planning a space battle. For the survival of their species, Admiral Foster stood at the central holographic display, which showed the tactical situation with clinical precision. Ladies and gentlemen, the Haxtanian fleet outguns us by approximately 4-1. Their ships are faster, better armored, and crewed by professional military personnel. In a straight fight, we lose. Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembly. Captain Chen of the New Horizon raised his hand. So what you're saying is we need to not fight fair? Foster nodded. Exactly. Our advantages are knowledge of the local system, control of the mining station, and the fact that they're expecting US to fight like a conventional fleet. Engineer Morrison activated a secondary display showing the mining station and surrounding asteroid field. The station's industrial equipment includes gravity manipulation systems for moving large asteroids. We can use those to create artificial debris fields. Force the Haxtanians to approach through predetermined corridors. Dr. Hoffman leaned forward. What about civilian casualties? We still have thousands of non-combatants in the convoy. Elena had been dreading this question. All civilian personnel will be evacuated to the station. It's the most defensible position we have. Our armed vessels will engage the Haxtanian fleet in the asteroid field, away from the station itself. And if we lose? Asked Captain Martinez of the cargo hauler heavy lifter. Elena was quiet for a moment. If we lose, the station has enough supplies and defensive systems to hold out for several months, maybe long. Enough for news of what happened. Here to reach other human survivors scattered across the galaxy. The room fell silent. Elena looked around at the faces of people who had already lost everything once, and were now being asked to risk everything again. I won't lie to you, she continued. What we're about to attempt is probably impossible, but the alternative is spending the rest of our lives on our knees, hoping that someday someone might show us mercy. Her voice hardened. I'd rather die fighting. The vote was unanimous. The next 60 hours transformed the Kepler 440 system into a maze of defensive positions and hidden weapon platforms. Using the mining station's gravity manipulators, human engineers moved asteroids into strategic positions, creating choke points where the superior Haxtanian numbers would be negated. The cargo hauler Iron Mountain was repositioned inside a hollowed-out asteroid, her missile fabrication systems working around the clock to produce hundreds of guided projectiles. The mining vessel's Titanium Express and Iron Forge took positions in the asteroid field's outer edge, their plasma weapons powered by portable fusion reactors salvaged from damaged ships. Most ambitious of all was the trap prepared using the Colossus herself. The massive hauler had been positioned behind the largest asteroid in the field, her construction arms extended and loaded with improvised mines built from mining explosives and sensor packages. Elena stood in the mining station's command center, watching the tactical display as the Haxtanian fleet approached the edge of the system. 37,000 human lives depended on the next few hours. Contact in 12 minutes, reported the sensor technician. Elena activated the fleet communication system. All vessels, this is Phoenix Control. She had chosen the call sign deliberately as symbol of rebirth from destruction. Remember, we're not just fighting for our lives today. We're fighting for the right to exist as free people. Make every shot count. The Haxtanian fleet entered the asteroid field in standard formation. 43 ships arranged in a defensive screen around their command vessels. Elena watched their approach with professional admiration. These were experienced military commanders who understood the dangers of fighting in an asteroid field. Unfortunately for them, they didn't understand what humans were capable of when their backs were against the wall. The first phase of the battle began when the lead Haxtanian vessels encountered what appeared to be natural asteroid debris drifting across their path. The ships adjusted course slightly to avoid collision, exactly as Elena had hoped. The debris detonated when the Haxtanian formation was directly over the hidden Iron Mountain. Dozens of missiles erupted from concealed launch tubes, catching the alien ships completely by surprise. 3 destroyers and a light cruiser were destroyed in the opening salvo. The Haxtanian fleet responded with textbook efficiency, their remaining ships spreading out and returning fire at the asteroid they believed contained the human missile platform. The Iron Mountain's position was quickly reduced to rubble, but the cargo hauler had already launched everything in her magazines. Phase 2 began as the Haxtanian ships penetrated deeper into the asteroid field, searching for the rest of the human fleet. They found the mining vessels exactly where Elena had positioned them in a crossfire position that maximized their plasma weapons' effectiveness while providing cover from counterattack. The battle in the asteroid field lasted 97 minutes. When it was over, 21 Haxtanian ships had been destroyed or disabled. But the human fleet had paid a terrible price. Only 6 of their original 37 armed vessels remained functional. Elena watched the surviving Haxtanian ships reform for what would certainly be their final assault. On the mining station, 22 enemy vessels against the station's automated defenses and the handful of human ships. Still capable of fighting. Phoenix Control, this is Admiral Foster aboard the Colossus. The transmission crackled with interference from the battle. Damage to communication systems. Initiating final phase. Elena held her breath as the massive hauler emerged from behind her asteroid concealment. At 3 kilometers long, the Colossus dwarfed every other ship in the system. But she was also a civilian vessel, never designed for combat. The Haxtanian commander apparently reached the same conclusion. Elena watched the enemy formation wheel toward the Colossus, clearly intending to destroy the largest remaining human ship and break their morale. They flew directly into Admiral Foster's trap. The Colossus's construction arms had been loaded with hundreds of mining charges, each one programmed to detonate at a specific distance from the ship. As the Haxtanian fleet closed to weapons range, Foster triggered the charges in a carefully timed sequence. The explosions created a spherical debris field around the Colossus, filled with high-velocity fragments of rock and metal. The Haxtanian ships, traveling at high speed to press their attack, couldn't avoid the expanding cloud of destruction. 11 ships were destroyed outright. 6 more suffered critical damage and were forced to withdraw. When the debris cloud cleared, only 5 Haxtanian vessels remained operational. Elena watched those 5 ships hang motionless in space for several minutes before their commander transmitted a formal surrender. The Battle of Kepler 442 was over. Humanity had won. News of the victory spread across local space with the speed of hyperspace communication. The ragtag human refugee convoy had defeated a professional military force 3 times their size. More importantly, they had captured industrial facilities and resources that would allow them to build a real fleet. Dr. Hoffman found Elena in the mining station's observation deck. 3 days after the battle, staring out at the convoy ships, now anchored around their captured facility. The Colossus had already begun construction of the first purpose-designed human warship, using resources and technology captured from the defeated Haxtanian fleet. Elena, we need to discuss what happens next. Elena turned to face the older woman. What do you mean? I mean, we've crossed a line we can't uncross. We're no longer refugees seeking sanctuary. We're a military force occupying alien territory. Sarah activated a portable display showing galactic news feeds. 3 different species have filed formal complaints about human piracy and territorial aggression. The Gelinari Empire has issued a statement expressing concern about human activities in violation of our exile terms. Elena studied the news reports. The victory at Kepler 442 had indeed changed how the galaxy viewed humanity. Some species now saw them as a potential threat to be contained. Others appeared interested in establishing relations with this new human faction. A few were quietly calculating whether the humans might make useful mercenaries or allies. Sarah, do you know what the Haxtanian Trade Consortium offered us when we first asked for sanctuary? Relocation to their industrial worlds as indentured workers. For how long? The contract term was indefinite. Elena nodded. Slavery by another name. They wanted to use our skills and knowledge while ensuring we could never threaten their economic dominance. She gestured toward the human ships anchored around the mining station. Now they don't have a choice. We've taken what we need to survive. But at what cost? We're making enemies across the galaxy. Elena was quiet for a moment, watching human workers in EVA suits installing weapon systems on a converted cargo hauler. Sarah, there's something I need to tell you. Something I haven't shared with the convoy. She activated her personal data pad, showing encrypted communications logs. Before Earth fell, Admiral Foster and I were part of a classified program. We were preparing for exactly this scenario: human survival in exile. Dr. Hoffman stared at the data. You're saying this was planned, not the details. We never expected to lose Earth so quickly or so completely. But we knew that if humanity was ever driven from our homeworld, we would face a choice: submit to alien rule or fight for independence. Elena highlighted specific entries in the communications log. There are other human survivor groups scattered across the galaxy. Colonies that declared independence when Earth fell. Military units that refused to surrender. Civilian populations that escaped in other convoys like ours. How many? Conservative estimates suggest perhaps 2 million humans in various exile communities. Most are small groups trying to blend in with alien populations or scratching out a living in frontier systems. Elena paused. But some have been waiting for a signal that humanity is ready to fight back. Sarah's eyes widened as she realized the implications. Elena, you're talking about rebuilding human civilization as a spacefaring power. I'm talking about ensuring that what happened to Earth never happens again. that humanity never again depends on alien mercy for survival. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the convoy. Captain Chen's voice carried across the station's comm system. Elena, you need to see this. We're receiving multiple hyperspace signatures on the edge of the system. Big ships. Unknown configuration. Elena and Dr. Hoffman rushed to the command center, where tactical displays showed 6 massive vessels emerging from hyperspace at the system's edge. The ships were unlike anything in the databases. Sleek, organic-looking hulls that seemed to pulse with internal energy. Time to intercept, Elena asked. Unknown. They're not moving toward us. Just hovering at the hyperspace emergence point, Elena studied the sensor readings. The ships were massive, each one easily the size of the Colossus, but their energy signatures were unlike any known technology. No weapons powered up, no aggressive maneuvers. Just 6 enormous vessels watching the human fleet from a safe distance. Are they transmitting anything? Negative. Complete radio silence. Elena made a decision that would haunt her for years to come. Signal all ships. Combat alert. If these newcomers want to communicate, they can damn well identify themselves. The response came not as a transmission, but as a mental voice that seemed to speak directly into Elena's consciousness. The words arrived in perfect English, with emotional undertones that suggested vast intelligence and careful consideration. Commander Elena Vasquez of the Human Exile Fleet, we are the architects. We have been watching your species with great interest. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. Around the command center, human personnel were stopping their work and staring at each other in confusion. The mental voice was reaching all of them simultaneously. We have observed your transformation from refugees to warriors. Your adaptation to exile circumstances demonstrates cognitive flexibility that is rare among younger species. Dr. Hoffman grabbed Elena's arm. Elena, these have to be one of the precursor races. The databases suggest they went extinct millions of years ago. The mental voice continued, apparently aware of their conversation. Not extinct, Dr. Hoffman. Merely selective about our interactions with developing civilizations. Your species has reached a threshold that warrants direct contact. Elena found her voice. What kind of threshold? The threshold between victim and survivor. Between dependent and independent. Between species that accepts its place in the galactic order, and species that shapes that order to its will. Images began appearing in Elena's mind, not hallucinations, but carefully crafted visions that conveyed information more efficiently than any conventional communication. She saw human colonies scattered across the galaxy, some thriving and hiding, others barely surviving as refugees. She saw alien empires that viewed humanity as a curiosity at best, a threat to be eliminated at worst. And she saw potential futures. Timelines where humanity faded into irrelevance, becoming a footnote in galactic history, and timelines where humans became one of the major powers shaping civilization across the stars. Why are you showing me this? Elena asked. Because your species stands at a crossroads. The path you choose in the coming years will determine not only humanity's fate, but the fate of dozens of other species watching your example. Elena felt a chill of understanding. Other species that might face what we faced. The Gelinari Empire is not unique in its expansion methods. Across the galaxy, aggressive civilizations conquer and displace others. Usually, the displaced populations accept their fate and integrate into their conqueror's society. Sometimes they are eliminated entirely. The visions in Elena's mind shifted, showing species after species falling to imperial expansion. Refugees, scattered across the stars, their cultures dying as they struggled simply to survive. But occasionally, the architect continued, a displaced species chooses to fight back, to refuse integration, refuse elimination, and instead forge a new path as an independent power. Elena understood. You're saying we could become a sanctuary for other refugee populations. More than that, you could become the foundation for a new model of galactic civilization. One based on cooperation between independent species rather than domination by imperial powers. The implications were staggering. Elena looked around the command center at her human colleagues, then out at the convoy ships that represented all that remained of Earth's civilization. What would that require? Strength, not just military power, but economic independence, technological advancement, and diplomatic skill. The path we offer is not easy, Commander Vasquez. Many species have attempted it. Most have failed. Elena felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Accept the architect's offer, and humanity would be committing to a future of constant struggle against the established galactic order. Refuse, and they would be on their own, forever vulnerable to the next aggressive empire that decided humans were a problem to be solved. What exactly are you offering? The answer came as another flood of images. technology blueprints for advanced weapons, engines, and industrial systems. Star charts showing resource-rich systems unclaimed by any major power. Most significantly, contact information for other species that had chosen independence over integration potential. Allies in humanity's struggle for survival. Knowledge, resources, and introductions to like-minded civilizations. But understand, Commander, this aid comes with obligations. Species that accept our assistance become part of a larger community. A community that protects its members but expects them to protect others in return. Eleanor realized what the architects were really offering: membership in a galactic alliance of independent species, united by their refusal to bow to imperial dominance. How long do I have to decide? Your species has already decided, Commander. The moment you chose to fight for the mining station rather than seek sanctuary elsewhere, you committed humanity to the path of independence. We are simply offering to help you walk that path more effectively. Elena felt the truth of those words. There was no going back to being refugees. No returning to the dream of finding some quiet corner of the galaxy where humanity could rebuild in peace. They had become players in the galactic power game, whether they wanted to or not. All right, Elena said, her voice carrying across the command center so her staff could hear her decision. What's the first step? The mental voice carried what Elena could only interpret as satisfaction. The first step is survival. The Gelinari Empire has become aware of your activities. They consider your victory as a violation of your exile terms, and are dispatching a punitive expedition. Dr. Hoffman grabbed Elena's arm. How long do we have? 17 standard days until their fleet arrives in the system. 237 ships, including 43 heavy cruisers and 7 dreadnought-class vessels. Elena felt her knees go weak. Even with architect assistance, there was no way their small fleet could face that kind of force. However, the architect continued, they are not expecting to find an empty system. Your first lesson in independence will be learning when to fight and when to disappear. Over the next hour, the architects transmitted detailed star charts showing a route to an unclaimed system 17 jumps away. The destination was a red dwarf star with 3 habitable worlds, and an asteroid belt rich in rare minerals. More importantly, it was located in a region of space where hyperspace travel was difficult, making it naturally defensible. The system designation in your databases is Wolf 1061, the architect explained. We have prepared it for human habitation. Industrial facilities have been established on the second planet, along with defensive installations that will help protect your growing civilization. Elena studied the star charts. Wolf 1061 was far from any major shipping lanes or alien territories. A perfect place to build a hidden stronghold. What about the other human survivor groups you mentioned? Coordinates and contact protocols are included in the data package. 12 major groups, ranging from military units to entire colonial populations. Most have been surviving in isolation, waiting for exactly this moment. The evacuation of Kepler 442 began immediately. In 17 days, the human fleet had to strip everything of value from the mining station and transport it to their new home system. It was a logistical nightmare that would have been impossible without the industrial equipment they had captured from the Haxtanians. Elena stood in the mining station's command center, watching the organized chaos of the evacuation around her. Human workers were dismantling alien technology and loading it onto transport ships. Everything that could be moved was being moved. Everything else was being rigged with demolition charges to deny it to the Gelinari. Captain Chen approached with a status report. 70% of the industrial equipment has been loaded. The Colossus has finished construction of our first real warship. He paused, seeming to savor the moment. Commander, I'd like you to meet the UES Defiance. Elena followed Chen to the observation deck, where she got her first look at humanity's new flagship. The Defiance was sleek and deadly, incorporating both human engineering principles and architect technology. At 800 meters long, she was larger than any ship in Earth's old defense fleet, bristling with weapon systems that could punch through the armor of a Gelinari heavy cruiser. She's beautiful, Elena breathed. And she's just the beginning, Chen replied. The architects transmitted manufacturing templates for an entire fleet. Cruisers, destroyers, carriers, support vessels. Give us 5 years in Wolf 1061, and we'll have a navy that can stand against any imperial power. Dr. Hoffman joined them at the observation deck, her expression troubled despite the remarkable sight of humanity's first purpose-built warship. Elena, I've been analyzing the architect data package. There's something you need to understand about what we're committing to. Elena turned to face the older woman. What do you mean? The alliance the architects described isn't just about mutual defense. Look at this. Sarah activated her data pad, showing demographic projections and resource allocation charts. The member species they've contacted represent over 40 different civilizations. Most are small, like us, refugee populations or minor powers that refused imperial domination. But together, Elena studied the numbers: 40 civilizations, each contributing unique technologies, resources, and military capabilities. The total population exceeded 12 billion individuals across hundreds of star systems. Together, we're talking about a major galactic power, Elena realized. Exactly. And major powers have responsibilities. The architects aren't just offering us protection, they're recruiting us to help protect others. Elena thought about the implications. Humanity was barely surviving as a refugee population. Could they really take on the responsibility of protecting other species? The answer came from an unexpected source. Engineer Morrison approached the group, his expression excited despite the stress of the evacuation. "Commander, you need to see what we found in the Haxtanian data cores." Morrison led them to a secure terminal where he activated a holographic display showing star charts, covering a vast region of space. The Haxtanians were more than just a trade consortium. They were slavers on an industrial scale. "Look at this." The display highlighted dozens of star systems where the Haxtanians had relocated refugee populations over the past century, species after species, driven from their homeworlds and forced into indentured servitude. "How many?" Elena asked quietly. Conservative estimates suggest over 8 million individuals from 23 different species, all working in Haxtanian industrial facilities, mining operations, and agricultural installations. Elena stared at the data, feeling the weight of revelation. The Haxtanians hadn't just refused humanity's sanctuary, they had built their entire economy on exploiting refugee populations. "Morrison, are you saying we could free these people?" "I'm saying we're probably the only ones who would even try. The major powers won't intervene in Haxtanian territory because it would disrupt trade, relationships. But a fleet of pirates operating from hidden bases," he grinned. "Well, pirates don't care about diplomatic consequences." Elena felt something shift inside her chest, a sense of purpose that went beyond simple survival. The architects weren't just offering humanity a chance to rebuild. They were offering humanity a chance to become something better than they had been. "Before the fall of Earth, Sarah," Elena said, turning to Dr. Hoffman, "run the calculations. How many refugee populations could we liberate and integrate into our growing alliance?" Dr. Hoffman worked at her data pad for several minutes before responding. "Based on the Haxtanian data and what the architects have shown us about other enslaved populations, potentially over 50 million individuals from dozens of species." Elena looked out at the human fleet anchored around the mining station. 342 ships, carrying 37,000 refugees. In a few years, if they were successful, they could be the core of a multi-species civilization dedicated to protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. "All right," Elena said, her decision crystallizing. "Signal all ships. We're not just evacuating to Wolf 1061. We're establishing humanity's new capital. And our first order of business will be building a fleet capable of liberating every refugee population in the sector." The evacuation was completed with 2 days to spare. As the human fleet prepared to jump to Wolf 1061, Elena stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned Defiance, watching the mining station's final moments. The demolition charges detonated in a carefully orchestrated sequence, ensuring that the Gelinari would find nothing but rubble when they arrived. Admiral Foster, now serving as Elena's fleet commander, approached with the final status report. "All ships accounted for. The convoy is ready for hyperspace jump." Elena nodded, but her attention was focused on the long-range sensors. Somewhere out there, a massive Gelinari fleet was racing toward the system, intent on crushing humanity's bid for independence. By the time they arrived, they would find nothing but empty space and the wreckage of a mining station. "Rebecca, what do you think they'll do when they realize we've escaped?" Admiral Foster was quiet for a moment. "They'll search every system within 50 light years. When they don't find us, they'll start pressuring the other imperial powers to deny us sanctuary. Eventually, they'll put bounties on our heads and hire mercenary fleets to hunt us down." Elena felt the weight of the future pressing down on her shoulders. "So we'll always be looking over our shoulders?" "No," Foster replied firmly. "We'll be looking forward, building something strong enough that we don't have to run anymore." The hyperspace jump to Wolf 1061 took 18 hours. When the human fleet emerged at their destination, Elena felt her breath catch at the sight that greeted them. The architects had been busy. The second planet showed clear signs of industrial development, geometric patterns of cities and factories, visible even from orbit. Orbital platforms surrounded the planet, bristling with defensive weapons and manufacturing facilities. Most impressively, a massive space dock hung in orbit, already containing the skeletal framework of what would become humanity's first space-based shipyard. "My God," whispered Captain Chen from his position at the sensor station. "It's like they built us a new homeworld." Elena activated the fleet communication system. "People of Earth, welcome to New Terra. Our new home, our new beginning, and the foundation for humanity's future among the stars." The colonization of New Terra proceeded with remarkable efficiency. The architect-provided facilities were designed for human physiology and included everything needed to support a growing population. Atmospheric processors worked to optimize the planet's air composition. Automated agricultural systems began producing food crops adapted to local soil conditions. Most importantly, the industrial facilities were already producing the raw materials needed to expand the growing fleet. Elena established her headquarters in the planetary capital, a city the colonists had named New Geneva in honor of Earth's old diplomatic traditions. From her office in the government complex, she could see the orbital shipyards where new warships were taking shape with each passing day. Dr. Hoffman joined her for their weekly briefing, bringing updates on the integration of new technologies and the status of contact attempts with other human survivor groups. "Elena, we've successfully established communication with 8 of the 12 groups the architects identified. The responses have been mixed." Elena looked up from the fleet construction reports she had been reviewing. "Mixed how?" "3 groups are eager to join us here on New Terra. Their small populations may be 5,000 people total, but they include some former Earth Defense Fleet units with valuable military experience." Sarah activated a holographic display, showing population and resource charts for groups are interested but cautious. They want assurances about our long-term viability before committing to relocation. And the 8th group, Sarah's expression darkened. "The colony at Kepler 186F. They've been in contact with the Jelinari Empire. They're trying to negotiate a return to Earth in exchange for information about our location and capabilities." Elena felt a cold fury building in her chest. "They're going to betray us." It gets worse. Intelligence analysis suggests they've already provided the Jelinari with our old convoy roster and the identities of our leadership. "The Empire knows who you are, Elena. They know about Admiral Foster, about our key personnel." Elena stared out the window at the orbital shipyards. In 6 months, they had built 12 warships and were close to completing their first carrier. But it wouldn't be enough if the Jelinari could track them to Wolf 1061. "Sarah, how long before the other human groups can reach us?" "The 3 committed groups should arrive within 4 weeks. The cautious ones are still deciding, but if they choose to come, it could be months before they complete the journey." Elena made a decision that would define humanity's future. "Send a message to all 8 groups. Tell them we're implementing immediate security protocols. Any group that wants to join us has 2 weeks to begin their journey. After that, we're going dark." "Elena, some of those groups aren't ready to relocate. You're asking them to abandon everything they've built since the exile." "I'm asking them to choose between their comfortable hiding places and humanity's future." Elena's voice hardened. "We can't build a civilization while constantly looking over our shoulders for betrayal." The next 2 weeks were a frenzy of activity. 3 human survivor groups did arrive at Wolf 1061, bringing their populations and resources to integrate with the growing colony. 2 more groups transmitted messages indicating they would begin their journey immediately. The other 3 groups, including the colony at Kepler 186F, maintained radio silence. Elena was reviewing defensive preparations when Admiral Foster contacted her with urgent news. "Elena, our long-range sensor stations are picking up hyperspace signatures at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts, configuration unknown." Elena felt her heart skip. "How many ships?" 17 vessels, approaching on a vector that suggests they know exactly where they're going. Elena grabbed her jacket and headed for the command center. If the Jelinari had found them, Wolf 1061's defenses were about to face their first real test. But when the approaching fleet emerged from hyperspace, Elena found herself looking at something she hadn't expected. Ships of completely unfamiliar design, sleek and angular with hulls that seemed to shift color in the starlight. "Are they transmitting anything?" Elena asked. "Yes, ma'am, it's in English. They're requesting permission to approach and offering greetings from the Kethver Coalition." Elena felt relief flood through her. The Kethver were one of the species the architects had mentioned, a warrior culture that had refused integration into a larger empire and had been fighting for independence for over a century. The meeting took place aboard the Defiance, in what Elena had designated as humanity's official diplomatic reception area. The Kethver delegation was led by a tall, reptilian female whose scales shifted from green to blue as she spoke. "Commander Vasquez, I am war leader Sarek of the Kethver Coalition. The architects informed us that humanity had chosen the path of independence. We come to offer alliance and mutual support. Elena studied the alien warrior. The Kethver were known throughout the sector as fierce fighters who had managed to carve out their own territory, despite pressure from 3 different imperial powers. What kind of alliance are you proposing? Military cooperation, technology exchange, and coordinated resistance to imperial expansion. The Gelinari Empire has been pressuring our territory. Since your escape from their punitive expedition, they believe we may be sheltering human refugees. Elena felt a chill of understanding. They're trying to force you to choose sides. Exactly. The Empire has given us 7 standard days to allow their inspection teams to search our territory for human fugitives. When we refuse, they will attack. Admiral Foster leaned forward. How large a force are they sending? Intelligence suggests a fleet's totaling nearly 400 ships, more than enough to crush our defenses. Sarak's scales shifted to a deeper blue. Unless, of course, we have allies. Elena looked around the conference room at her senior staff. The choice was clear. Help the Kethver fight off the Gelinari attack, or watch their potential ally be destroyed and face the Empire's full attention alone. War Leader Sarak, how much time do we have to prepare? For days until the Gelinari fleets reach Kethver space. Elena made her decision. Admiral Foster, begin immediate preparations. We're taking the fleet to assist our new allies. Dr. Hoffman looked alarmed. Elena, we only have 14 warships. The Gelinari will outnumber us 30 to 1. Sarah, we're not fighting a conventional battle. We're proving that humanity keeps its word and protects its friends. Elena turned back to the Kethver leader. War leader, I assume you have defensive advantages in your home system. Sarak's scales brightened noticeably. The Kethver have been preparing for this war for 50 years. Our worlds are heavily fortified, and we know every asteroid, every gravity well, every hiding place in our territory. Then we'll give the Gelinari a lesson in asymmetric warfare. The Battle of Kethver became the foundation legend of what would eventually be known as the Free Worlds Alliance. Elena's fleet arrived just hours before the Gelinari attack, positioning themselves in carefully prepared ambush sites throughout the asteroid fields surrounding the Kethver homeworld. The battle lasted 3 days. Elena's ships used hit-and-run tactics, striking from concealment and disappearing before the Gelinari could respond effectively. The Kethver defensive platforms provided covering fire, while their own fleet engaged in coordinated attacks on isolated Gelinari formations. When it was over, the Gelinari had lost 67 ships and had been forced to withdraw from Kethver space. More importantly, word of the victory spread quickly through local space, reaching other independent species and refugee populations. Elena stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the wreckage of Gelinari ships drift through space around the Kethver homeworld. In less than a year, humanity had gone from helpless refugees to the core of an emerging alliance that could challenge imperial dominance. War leader Sarak approached, her scales now a brilliant gold that Elena had learned indicated joy and gratitude. Among the Kethver, Commander Vasquez, the Coalition Council has voted unanimously. We formally request to join your growing alliance. Our ships, our worlds, our warriors are at your disposal. Elena felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. 37,000 human refugees have become the leadership of a multi-species coalition dedicated to protecting the weak and resisting imperial oppression. War leader, we accept your alliance with honor. Together, we'll build something better than what came before. Over the following months, the Free Worlds Alliance grew rapidly. The victory at Kethver had demonstrated that imperial fleets could be defeated by determined cooperation between independent species. Refugee populations across the sector began sending delegations to New Terra, seeking membership in the growing coalition. Elena established formal diplomatic protocols and began construction of a permanent council chamber, where representatives from member species could meet to coordinate their mutual defense and plan liberation operations for enslaved populations. The first major liberation mission targeted the Haxtanian slave facilities at HD 164-595, where over 300,000 individuals from 17 different species had been forced into industrial servitude. The operation required careful coordination between human stealth ships, Kethver assault forces, and defensive fleets from 3 other Alliance member species. Elena watched the mission unfold from the command center on New Terra, monitoring communications from dozens of ships spread across multiple star systems. The Liberation Forces had spent weeks infiltrating Haxtanian space, identifying guard positions, and preparing extraction sites for the freed slaves. Phoenix Control. This is Liberation Fleet Alpha, came Admiral Foster's voice from the HD 164-595 system. Industrial facilities are secured. beginning civilian evacuation. Elena felt tears in her eyes as reports came in from the liberation sites. Families reunited after decades of separation. Children who had never known freedom taking their first steps on board Alliance ships. Entire communities that had given up hope now preparing to start new lives in Alliance territory. But the liberation operations also brought new challenges. The freed populations included species with radically different physiologies, cultures, and technological capabilities. Integration required massive resources and careful diplomatic management to prevent conflicts between groups that had little in common, except their shared history of oppression. Dr. Hoffman found Elena in her office late one evening, reviewing integration reports and resource allocation projections. Elena, we need to talk about the sustainability of our expansion. Elena looked up from the data stream showing dozens of new refugee populations arriving at Alliance worlds each week. What do you mean? I mean we're taking in people faster. Then we can properly integrate them. The infrastructure requirements alone are staggering, not to mention the cultural and political challenges. Sarah activated a holographic display showing population growth projections. At current rates, we'll have over 10 million people across 47 worlds within 2 years. Elena studied the projections. The Alliance was becoming a major galactic power almost by accident, driven by their commitment to protecting refugee populations rather than any planned expansion strategy. Sarah, are you suggesting we start turning people away? I'm suggesting we need to be more strategic about which populations we try to integrate, and which ones we help establish their own independent settlements. Dr. Hoffman highlighted several refugee groups that were scheduled to arrive in the coming weeks. Some of these species have technologies and resources that would significantly strengthen the Alliance. Others represent enormous cost with minimal strategic benefit. Elena felt uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. You're talking about judging people's worth based on what they can contribute. I'm talking about ensuring the Alliance survives long enough to help anyone. Elena, we're already stretching our resources to the breaking point. If we keep accepting every refugee population that asks for help, we'll collapse under our own good intentions. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the sensor stations monitoring the approaches to Alliance space. Captain Chen's voice carried across the office speakers with barely controlled excitement. Commander Vasquez, you need to see this. We're receiving a transmission from the edge of Alliance space. It's from Earth. Elena felt her blood freeze. From Earth? That's impossible. The Gelinari sealed the system. Mum. The transmission is definitely originating from Sol System. And Elena, it's from Admiral Thompson of the Earth Defense Force. Elena stared at Dr. Hoffman in stunned silence. Admiral Thompson had been commanding Earth's orbital defenses. When the Gelinari attack began, everyone assumed he had died in the bombardment of Luna Command. Put the transmission through to my office. Full encryption. The face that appeared on Elena's holographic display was older and more weathered than she remembered, but it was definitely Admiral Richard Thompson. Behind him, she could see what appeared to be the command center of a military facility. Commander Vasquez, it's good to see you alive. We've been monitoring your activities through long-range sensors and intercepted communications. The Free Worlds Alliance has become quite famous, even on Earth. Elena found her voice. Admiral Thompson, how is this possible? We thought Earth was under complete Gelinari control. Thompson's expression hardened. The surface is, but the resistance has been growing in the underground facilities and asteroid mining stations. We've been preparing for this moment for 2 years. What moment? The moment when humanity was strong enough to come home. Elena felt her heart racing. Admiral, what are you saying? I'm saying that 23 million humans on Earth and in the Sol System are ready to rise up against Gelinari occupation. But we need support. We need ships, weapons, and most importantly, we need hope that our sacrifice won't be in vain. Dr. Hoffman grabbed Elena's arm. Elena, this could be a trap. The Gelinari could be using Earth's population as bait. Elena stared at Admiral Thompson's image, seeing the desperation and determination in his eyes, the same expression she had seen in the faces of every refugee population the Alliance had liberated. Admiral, what do you need from us? A coordinated liberation operation. The Resistance can take control of Earth's orbital defenses and major population centers, but only if we have Alliance support to deal with the Gelinari fleet stationed in the outer system. Elena felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. A liberation operation against Earth would require most of the Alliance fleet, and would certainly provoke massive retaliation from the Gelinari Empire. But it would also free Earth's population and demonstrate that no imperial power was strong enough to permanently hold territory against the united opposition of free worlds. Admiral Thompson, how long do we have to prepare? The Resistance Network is ready to move on your signal. But Elena, the Gelinari are planning to relocate Earth's remaining population to their industrial worlds within 6 months. This is our last chance. Elena looked at Dr. Hoffman, seeing her own conflicted emotions reflected in the older woman's face. The liberation of Earth would be the Alliance's greatest victory, but it would also transform them from a defensive coalition into an active threat to Imperial dominance. Admiral, we'll be there. Give us for weeks to assemble the fleet and coordinate with our allies. Thompson's relief was visible. Elena, there's something else. We've made contact with other human populations throughout Gelinari space. If the Earth liberation succeeds, it could trigger uprisings across a dozen systems. After the transmission ended, Elena sat in stunned silence. The Free Worlds Alliance was about to attempt the liberation of humanity's homeworld, an operation that would either establish them as a major galactic power or result in their complete destruction. Dr. Hoffman was the first to speak. Elena, the strategic implications are staggering. If we succeed, we'll control one of the most important systems in this part of the galaxy. Earth's technology, resources, and symbolic value would transform the Alliance overnight. Elena nodded, slowly. And if we fail, the Gelinari will hunt down every Alliance world and exterminate us as an example. 2 other potential rebels. Exactly. This isn't just a liberation operation, it's a bet on humanity's future. Elena stood and walked to the window, looking out at the lights of New Geneva and the orbital shipyards, where Alliance engineers were building the most advanced fleet in human history. Sarah, in the past year, we've grown from 37,000 refugees into a coalition of 47 worlds with over 8 million people. We've liberated enslaved populations, defeated imperial fleets, and proven that free worlds can stand together against oppression. Elena turned back to face Dr. Hoffman. But we've never tried to liberate a homeworld. We've never challenged an empire's right to hold conquered territory. And if we do this, we'll be declaring war on the established galactic order. Elena felt a moment of clarity that would define her legacy and humanity's place among the stars. Sarah, the established galactic order is built on the principle that might makes right. That strong empires can conquer and enslave weaker populations without consequence. She gestured toward the data displays showing Alliance member species and liberated populations. We've already proven that principle is wrong. Now, we're going to prove it to the entire galaxy. Elena activated the Alliance communication system, sending her words to every member world. Every ship, every free citizen who had chosen independence over submission. People of the Free Worlds Alliance, this is Commander Elena Vasquez. 2 years ago, humanity was driven from Earth as helpless refugees. Today, we stand ready to liberate our homeworld and free 23 million of our people from alien oppression. She paused, knowing that her next words would echo through history. But this operation is about more than just humanity. It's about proving that no empire is strong enough to permanently hold territory taken from free people. It's about demonstrating that the galaxy belongs to all its children, not just the strongest predators. Elena's voice carried across the Alliance as ships began moving toward assembly points, and civilian populations prepared for the economic mobilization that would support the largest military operation in their history. And for weeks, the Free Worlds Alliance will attempt something that many believe is impossible. We will challenge the Gelinari Empire's right to hold Earth. We will prove that refugees can become liberators, that the oppressed can become the protectors, and that free worlds united can stand against any tyranny. Elena felt the future crystallizing around her words. Today, we stop running. Today, we go home. The liberation of Earth would become the defining moment of Elena Vasquez's life and the foundational myth of the Free Worlds Alliance. But that story belongs to another day. For now, it was enough that a human woman who had once watched Earth burn from the deck of a refugee transport was preparing to lead a multi-species fleet in humanity's return to the stars from which they had been exiled. The convoy that had fled Earth in desperation had become something unprecedented, a beacon of hope for every oppressed population in the galaxy. Proof that even the mightiest empire could not extinguish the flame of freedom.